Week 14 is usually the week where either your fantasy football playoffs have started or it's the week right before your fantasy football playoffs. Either way, it is an extremely important week in fantasy football. And you know why we do this on Saturdays. We do this on Saturdays because of the fact that we can get lots of injury updates and news before Sunday for Week 14 fantasy football. So today, I'm going through every matchup to find the must-start and sit running backs for fantasy football in Week 14. And I am one of the only fantasy football YouTubers working on a Saturday every week to get you guys the best content possible. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Let's go ahead and dive right into these matchups right now. So the first matchup of the week is the Houston Texans at the New York Jets. So Breece Hall he's actually in kind of Garrett Wilson territory, where it's like he's right on the border of must start and right on the border of flex territory. I don't think that he is must start technically, but I do think that in most situations, if I'm thinking about guys like the other two in this matchup, Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary, is not even a question. Give me Breece Hall all day. If it's between him and Keaton Mitchell, I would still take Breece Hall. Breece Hall is still above the majority of guys who are going to be in flex territory, and that's kind of the dividing factor for me. Matchup is not great. We know his touches are probably going to be there as long as he plays. Now, Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary, I kind of said this last week, and I really do mean this. I really don't like the Texans backfield at all. Like, I think that it's the worst backfield besides maybe Chicago that like I can't figure out. I honestly don't know what to think. Because Dameon Pierce is starting to handle all the work again. But Devin Singletary's he's been better. He's just been better. But they're not giving him the ball as much. So I can't say that I would flex Devin Singletary over Dameon Pierce if he's only getting 8 carries compared to Dameon Pierce's 14. And that's what's starting to happen again. Either way, I really don't want either of these options this week against the Jets defense that just shut down Bijan Robinson the previous week. And then Dalvin Cook, to me, I think that if you're playing Dalvin Cook, you've got to be really desperate. And I know that I said a couple days ago before Zeke went off to sit Zeke, and he obviously went off, it's not the same with Dalvin Cook. It's really not. This offensive line is atrocious. This offense as a whole is just as messy as the New England Patriots. And Dalvin Cook doesn't even look like he wants to be there. And he's not exactly healthy either. I can't endorse playing Dalvin Cook. The Los Angeles Rams at the Baltimore Ravens. Kyren Williams is flat out must start every week now. I mean, we're at that point where Kyren Williams is really one of the only running backs consistently in like the top 3 that like from now on. It used to be a guy like Austin Eckler. He's no longer like that. Derrick Henry, no longer like that. Kyren Williams is stepping in, and he's been massive this year. So even in a tough matchup against Baltimore, in Baltimore, they don't match up well. There's no way I could tell my audience at this time of the year, yeah, just put Kyren Williams on your bench, it's a bad matchup. I can't endorse that. There's no way. You have to play Kyren Williams. And then Keaton Mitchell and Gus Edwards, they're both flexible. I said it earlier this week, though. I said Keaton Mitchell is actually the guy I prefer right now. Because when you stack them both up together, their touches the past 2 weeks have almost been identical. Neither one of them gets receiving upside. So really when it comes down to is which one of these guys is more explosive. Keaton Mitchell's the more explosive guy. He's way more efficient than Gus Edwards is. But the problem that Gus Edwards has, or the good thing that Gus Edwards has instead of Keaton, is that Gus Edwards can get in the end zone because he handles goal line work. That's the big difference here. I think that Gus Edwards can get in the end zone. And I think that it's more likely because he gets the goal line work. So I think they're both flexible. I do prefer Keaton Mitchell, though, because we could absolutely see a 100-yard game from him. We can't see that with Gus Edwards. And then Royce Freeman, since Kyren Williams has been back, has went back to irrelevancy. You can't play him. The Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints here. Alvin Kamara's easy must start. I mean, Alvin Kamara every week is a must start guy, but especially against the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers have been routinely ripped apart by whoever the opposing running back is. It doesn't matter who it is. That running back is going off. So Alvin Kamara cannot be on your bench anytime. but especially in week 14 when his ceiling is about 35 to 40 points. No joke. I'm not joking. That's the ceiling this week. Chuba Hubbard is flexible, and I would actually say that he's not a high-end flex option, but he's kind of in that higher middle end. That's what I would say. Chuba Hubbard did have a good week last week. He had 20 plus touches, 25 plus touches actually. He actually had a good week. The problem that I think is going to happen this week is that New Orleans is just not going to be as pleasant to him on the ground as Tampa Bay was. And New Orleans defense hasn't been great lately, but I do think it is better than Tampa's. I don't see Chuba Hubbard being able to have that same success 2 weeks in a row. I just don't think that's going to happen, but I do think that if you want a ceiling play, it's not a bad option. It's really not a bad option right now because he's handling everything at this point. Miles Sanders, you can't play him. You can't play Miles Sanders. Not only has he not been involved, he's not been good. Like, he hasn't been good at all this year. So, no, I can't endorse playing Miles Sanders, and neither can I play either of the other two Saints running backs either. The Indianapolis Colts at the Cincinnati Bengals this week. Zach Moss, Joe Mixon, fire them both up. Fire them both up. They're both in the same tier for me. They're really only separated by, I think, 1 or 2 spots at this point for me, off the top of my head. Zach Moss is, I get it. I've seen concerns with Zach Moss this week, and I actually do understand it. I think that Zach Moss is a little bit concerning right now. I think that when you look at what Zach Moss did last week against the Titans, a lot of things were set up in his favor. He didn't do anything. Not everything, but he did not do what we thought he would do before the week was started. So I understand the Zach Moss concern. What I will say to that is there are not many running backs out there who can come off that much time basically being benched for no good reason, other than the fact that they had Jonathan Taylor, who's a better player, and they gave him more money to. He was playing excellent when they benched him, and it's like, how can you really come back into the lineup and just expect to be the best player again? Like, you can't do that. That's pretty hard to do. So I think that was his problem last week. I think we could see a much better and more improved Zach Moss effort in this week. And then Joe Mixon, I think at this point, is going to be right on the border of start and flex territory for me. I just think that Joe Mixon, what he did last week was shocking. I did not expect that. And I didn't expect it from the Bengals offense as a whole. So against the Colts are a good fantasy defense, but I've been saying this all year. They're a bend but don't break defense. They give up yards. They give up points. They get turnovers, though. They get turnovers and they get your quarterback. So I think that Joe Mixon actually might have a decent opportunity this week. And the only reason you might be wondering who Chase Brown is, if you didn't watch the Monday night game, I don't blame you. Chase Brown on Monday night had some work. Now, Chase Brown is a rookie running back out of Illinois for the Cincinnati Bengals. And Chase Brown was actually a pretty good player when I scouted him. Do I think he's taken over? Absolutely not. I don't know why he started getting work, but he did. So I have to mention his name, even though we're not going to consider playing him. I want to get my audience familiar with him, but we're not playing this guy. Don't worry. I just want to mention the name so we can get some familiarity. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Atlanta Falcons. Bijan Robinson, Rachaad White, fire them both up. At this point, Rachaad White, I mean, he has to be fired up. You have to play Rachaad White. He's been really good in fantasy football. Do I think that he's a better running back than Bijan Robinson? No, I don't. Bijan Robinson had an okay fantasy week last week. And he still had 80 yards, but it was a little concerning, you know, like average less than 3 yards per carry. Here's the thing. I don't think that that's going to be, I think that's an outlier for Bijan Robinson. I think in his first couple years, we won't see many games like that. That's kind of an outlier week for him. He's just an excellent player. And now he is handling 20 plus opportunities. You can't you can't consider putting Bijan on your bench. You just can't do it. Nobody else is flexible. And Tyler Algier at this point, like, he's not uninvolved. He's not like he's just sitting on the sidelines for no good reason. But Tyler Algier is just not. If you can't get him 15 to 20 opportunities. This guy's not making much happen. He's just not as good of a player. The Jacksonville Jaguars at the Cleveland Browns here. And Travis Etienne, I get it. Like, I've gotten a lot of questions on him this week. Now, obviously, he's questionable heading into this game. We don't know if he's actually going or not. So, Travis Etienne being banged up is a concern. Trevor Lawrence, he's banged up. He's a game time call. I don't expect him to go. I really, really don't. And that would make Travis Etienne really important in this offense if he does not go. Travis Etienne, if he plays, I have to endorse playing him. He will be extremely important if Trevor Lawrence does not go. So, I get it. Travis Etienne is not nearly as good as he was at the beginning of the season. The first half of the season for Travis Etienne was great. This back half has been disappointing. I still think that his importance in this offense is extremely high. Ultimately, because of the fact that Trevor Lawrence may not be there. So, I'll have to say that you can play him. Now, Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, I think you can play both of them. I said it last week, I'm worried about Jerome Ford. I really am. I don't think that his upside is that high because the last 2 weeks, 9 carries. The last 2 weeks. It's a timeshare. It is a true timeshare. Kareem Hunt is splitting this backfield. Now, Kareem Hunt hasn't looked as good in fantasy football for the past several weeks because he's not getting in the end zone. Well, that's the thing I've been saying all year with Kareem Hunt. You need him to get in the end zone for him to give you any kind of fantasy value. And he hasn't been getting in the end zone. So we need him in the end zone, but it's definitely possible with the work he gets. So they're both, I would say, relatively close. I prefer Jerome Ford. I do because I think he's more explosive. I think he's a better player at this point. But Kareem Hunt, he can still pound the rocket. So I got to say Kareem Hunt is not a bad option. And then Tank Bigsby is on flex territory exclusively if Travis Etienne sits. If Etienne sits, Tank Bigsby can be flexed. He absolutely can be. I don't think it's going to be D'Ernest Johnson. That's why I put him on sit territory. I think if anything, there's a timeshare maybe of D'Ernest Johnson getting like 10 carries while Tank Bigsby gets like 15 touches. If Travis Etienne's there, they're both no-goes either way. Tank Bigsby's flexibility completely depends on Travis Etienne's availability. Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears. Jahmyr Gibbs, Dave Montgomery, you can play them both. Dave Montgomery for obvious reasons. He's handling a consistent workload. He's averaging 15 carries per game at least. 15 to 20. And he gets in the end zone basically every week because of the fact that their offensive line is tremendous and because it's the role they use him in. This is a Jamal Williams player right here, except he's better. He's better than Jamal Williams was last year. So Dave Montgomery, I don't think should go on anyone's bench. It's a revenge game in Chicago. I love a good revenge game because a lot of times these players do play well against their former teams. Dave Montgomery, easy pick here. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, I do think that we're going to see highs and lows for the rest of the year. And it makes it tough because it's obviously, this is crunch time. We can't afford to put Jahmyr Gibbs in and get us 3 or 4 points. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think at worst, you'll see depending on your scoring format, 5 to 6 points at worst, but his ceiling is still just high, guys. It's really high ceiling. And I love the matchup here, so I can't tell my audience to put him on the bench. And then the three Bears running backs here, I don't know what to do with. Like I said with the Texans, I have no idea what to do with them. Deonta Foreman coming back, I actually kind of feel like he's going to lead this backfield again. I do. But Roschon Johnson had 10 carries while Khalil Herbert had 4 last week. So I've got the pecking order, Deonta Foreman, Roschon Johnson, then Khalil Herbert. I honestly just don't know what to think. I can't endorse playing any of them for certain. They're all in flex territory for a reason, because I do think they're all relatively decent upside, because let's be honest, the Bears offense they're not a good team, but their offense is not incompetent. They can move the ball. So the Bears' weapons absolutely can have an opportunity. I just don't know which one it is. So you can take the shot at any of them, but make no mistake, all of these 3 are pretty deep shots. And then Craig Reynolds has been irrelevant ever since both Lions running backs have been back. Seahawks at the 49ers here. Christian McCaffrey, start him. Let's move on. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, they're both injured this week. They're both coming in questionable. So if one of them plays, you can play him. If both of them play, I would prefer Kenneth Walker. I would. I don't think that Zach Charbonnet, based on what I saw from the injury last week against the Cowboys, it looked like he could miss. I would not be surprised if he missed this game. I would not be surprised. So I think that just from a health standpoint, with multiple weeks off, I can see Kenneth Walker coming back and being relatively healthy. So I would go Kenneth Walker over Charbonnet just for that exclusive reason. And if not, DJ Dallas is playable. But make no mistake, guys, I am not endorsing my audience to start a Seahawks running back this week against the 49ers. It's just not happening. This is a tough matchup here. It's a very tough matchup. So yeah, that's how I feel about Seattle's running backs. And you can't play either of the 49ers running backs. The Minnesota Vikings at the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Josh Jacobs, fire him up. No question about it. There's no question to me what you should be doing with Josh Jacobs. You fire him up and you don't even consider anything else. Josh Jacobs is going to be fine. I think the matchup this week is fine, but ultimately what it comes down to is Josh Jacobs just gets work consistently. Even if he's not efficient, and he hasn't been this year, he's getting 25 opportunities per game, and he can still make big plays. So you have to start Josh Jacobs. The two Vikings running backs, I think Madison's going to be the guy. I do, because of the fact that last time they played, Madison had basically all the work, and Ty Chandler had 4 opportunities. So I do think that there's a clear pecking order here, but I think it's week to week. I do think it's week to week. So I think that if you really want to take a deep shot, Ty Chandler, you could play him over Tyler Algier. I'm fine with that. You could play him over Dearness Johnson, but I'm not big on Ty Chandler whatsoever. Zamir White, obviously you can't play him. Denver Broncos at the Los Angeles Chargers this week. I've been discussing Austin Eckler this week. Not only am I concerned about him, but he almost made it into flex territory. I don't think he's that lock star anymore. And I'll tell you what. Obviously, everybody can see what he's been doing from a fantasy football perspective. That's no secret to anybody at this point. Austin Eckler has been, and I've been saying this for years, if you take those touchdowns away, his fantasy production is very pedestrian. And now we're seeing it. We're seeing it right now. He's not efficient this year. He hasn't looked very explosive. The ultimate problem here is that I read a report. This wasn't even a report. This was direct quotes from Brandon Staley's mouth, the head coach. He said that there's gonna be a fight and a toss-up for running back touches this week. Joshua Kelly is not in flex territory, but I don't think he's far outside of it. If you needed a deep shot and you were just throwing a Hail Mary, I don't think Josh Kelly's the worst option. Austin Eckler is very, very close to tumbling even further. So I would say start him this week against the Broncos because I do think that still a good player, still can break off a big play at any point, I think. But my confidence in him right now, it's rock bottom. And then Javonte Williams is a high-end flex option. A high-end flex option bordering into must-start territory. He gets all the opportunities out of the backfield. He's just not very efficient. It's just not been a super efficient year for him. And he hasn't found the end zone much. So I don't love Javonte. Like his upside I don't think is that high. But just from a workload perspective, it's similar to a Josh Jacobs, which is why he can be flexed in most weeks. And then you set the Broncos running backs on your bench. They're not important. And then Josh McKelly, like I said, not this week, but let's watch this one this week. And then we can make a decision moving forward for next week. The Buffalo Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs. Can't wait for this matchup. I can't wait for this matchup. Nobody's must start though. In the running back territory, nobody's a must start. James Cook, high-end flex. High-end flex. Borderline must start. I discussed it weeks ago. I think James Cook, honestly, has a chance to be a really good play in the back half. In this part of the playoffs, I think James Cook could be very important. I would keep a very strong eye on James Cook. Since Ken Dorsey, their offensive coordinator former, has been fired, 2 games, 20 plus opportunities. He's there. He's there knocking on the door. In a high upside matchup, I would play James Cook in most situations. And then the 2 Chiefs running backs, obviously Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they're important now because of Isaiah Pacheco being out. That's why it's important to do these on Saturdays. Isaiah Pacheco out, they're 2 Chiefs options, they're both flexible. I actually prefer Jerick McKinnon, and the reason why is because we have seen more upside from Jerick McKinnon the past several years. With Clyde, it's very, very spotty. Let me be clear on this. Both of them might end up with nothing. Honestly, I could see a world where both of them end up with nothing. But both of them could. I think if you line both of them up, Jerick McKinnon has the chance for a bigger game than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's the way I look at it. And then Pacheco, you got to sit obviously because he's out. And Latavius Murray, I'd continue to ride the bench with him, and especially now with no Ken Dorsey. Philadelphia Eagles at the Dallas Cowboys. Both of these backs, you play them both. Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, you play both of them. Tony Pollard, 3 straight weeks. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. I'm playing this guy. And by the way, a Philadelphia defense against the run, on paper, very good. Last couple weeks, not been that good. So play Tony Pollard. And DeAndre Swift, I get the concerns. I really do. I went into this one earlier in the week. I said, I've got concerns with this one because of not because the 49ers did what they did. I expect that. They're a great defense. I'm concerned because of how quickly the Eagles just abandoned the run. They abandoned the run in that game. That was concerning. So I am concerned, but I stand by the philosophy of wanting to play options that are the best on your team in a high upside offense, in a high upside matchup. That's how I feel. That's why I played DeAndre Swift again. And Rico Dowdle has been fighting through injury. I just don't think it's worth it right now. And Kenneth Gainwell, borderline flexible. I think he's always got an inch of flexibility at the very least because he can pass catch, but I would not do it personally. I'm not endorsing my audience to. The Green Bay Packers at the New York Giants. Saquon Barkley, you just continue to play him. I mean, you can just continue to expect low-end RB1, high-end RB2 production. That's just what Saquon Barkley is. He's the whole offense. They don't move the ball if he doesn't move. It's all dependent on him. So he'll have a good game, he'll have bad games sometimes. I can't really call it, though. I can't. I mean, unless he's playing the Panthers or the Commanders, I can't call this one. The Packers defense, I'm very interested to watch this week. Either way you play him, though. And then A.J. Dillon, I mean, if he's all alone, you can continue to play. And I would say that if he's all alone, he moves into start category. He does. The matchup is good this week. But Aaron Jones did practice, and he looks like he might return. So from that standpoint, it bumps him down a little bit. And Aaron Jones, if he plays, don't get it twisted. Very low-end flex option. I would rather play A.J. Dillon this week than Aaron Jones. He's been banged up. They don't even want him on this team right now. That's not a secret. So, I don't think Aaron Jones is going to be very relevant if he does play. And then obviously, Matt Breida, no. The Tennessee Titans at the Miami Dolphins. The final matchup of the week. Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, you play them both. This is a rare team that you will see 2 running backs on the same team, both in must-start territory. It's a very rare situation. You will not see that very much. I think they're both playable. Raheem Mostert has been in the end zone over a dozen times this year. It's ridiculous. And Devon Achane, I mean, at this point, I prefer him over Raheem Mostert, but that's because he's just so explosive. And the reason you can play Raheem Mostert is because he's an end zone threat, and because Devon Achane, I've discussed this over the entire year, he raises his ceiling. He does. So yes, continue to play both these running backs. Derrick Henry, a high-end flex option, but I am not comfortable this week. Look, he's playing a team that may very well be up 17-0 by the end of the first quarter. It's possible. And if that happens, that's generally when we start to see more of Tyjae Spears. So this one is matchup dependent. I'm really worried about the game script in this one. Although I say You can't bench Derrick Henry in most situations because of the fact that he is high upside, but I do worry about matchup here, and that's why Tyjae Spears, I think, is flexible. Derrick Henry's a high-end flex option. Tyjae Spears is more of a middle-end flex option. I do think that they're both playable, though, and I am a little bit worried about this game script. So let me know what questions you need answered for Week 14 fantasy football in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 12 defense rankings for Week 12 fantasy football, click on this video right here.